about the budget, the big ticket, event next week. What are your expectations? The government is in a tight spot. The elections next year, populism has to be, met, but at the same time, fiscal prudence has to be maintained. So, what are the key things that it's difficult to be certain? But what do you think the government has? What kind of options it has?
Tough to say at this point in time, and it's tough to say for the simple reason that usually you get a fairly clear signal from the entire government. You're not getting that kind of signal because if you look at everything that the finance minister has said and done, including what he's managed to achieve on diesel, including the kind of problems he's having with some of his cabinet colleagues for not giving them as much money as they would like for their pet projects and programs.
Defense,
I think he's sending out a very strong message that he's worried about the structural aspects of the economy. He's worried about the fiscal deficit. He wants to get these in control. And a large part of the government seems to be going along with him. It would be inconceivable to even think that he's doing all this without the support of the political establishment, without the support of the Congress.
Very surprising.
Yeah, so I think he obviously has the buy-in. He's managed to get his point of view across. And to me, that's a huge achievement. I think we sort of tend to downplay it by saying things like, Chidambaram is talking up the markets and the markets love this man and all that. All these are facts. I'm not denying the fact that he does have a very, very market-friendly personality, right? He's very, and a very business-friendly personality. But the fact is, he's managed to go out and convince a party which is going to face an election, a critical election for it, maybe next year, maybe this year, if some theories are to be believed, to do very, very tough things, which structural things that are antithetical to how it thinks and acts typically.
And he's been able to give the mummerings to the
so he's done that. But at the same time, like you said, you can't ignore the fact that the budget is has always been influenced by the political climate and political exigencies, and the elections are there in 2014 or maybe late 2013, and they have to do something. So it's tough to say. A week before the budget, I don't think any expert in this country can still put his neck on the line and say it is going to be populist or it's going to be reformist. I think you're going to see a lot of tough measures in this budget. I think you will see a lot of changes in some of the tax measures that are there. I'm not so sure that the focus will be on widening the tax net, because that's a tough thing to do. I think existing taxpayers, especially those who earn more,
the super rich or like this.
I'm not so sure I would call them the super rich, right? Because I to my mind, a lot of the super rich don't pay taxes. Right, so I think the focus would be on salaried executives and probably senior salaried executives, getting them to pay more. So there will be a tax, and some of the, because you have to get tax revenues in, and obviously, given all the statements he's made about the spending of other departments, it's not as if he's going to throw a lot of money at some of the pet programs of this government. So. If I were to, if you were to ask me, tell me that I have to come out with a point of view to your, while I'm answering this question, I would say that I think it's going to be a fairly reformist budget from the structural point of view. I don't think they're going to announce any great policy reforms, but in terms of the discipline that's going to be shown fiscally, in terms of the signal that's sent out to investors, to credit rating agencies and all that, I think it's going to be very progressive. I could be wrong, but it would be unfortunate for this country if I'm wrong, because it would mean then that politics has scored over economics. But we'll again, 28th is not so far away. I'm hoping it will be reformist.
Especially with agencies like Moody's constantly threatening them.
I'm not downgrading. And also, I don't think we should see that as a. We're not reacting to their threats, that's because I think
it's surely building up the pressure.
Because the fact is, it is surely building up the pressure. But the fact is, that's the truth, right? You're not. They are not saying something which is not true. This country faces more pressure on the external sector than it has at any point in time. And some would believe, and if you look at various statements that economists have made over the last 12 months, some would believe it's almost as bad as 1991, right? So you have to respond to it in some way, and I think the budget will probably respond to it by being a rational, progressive, reformist budget, at least from the fiscal point of view.
Sure. There are also very important, few important bills like PFRDA bill and land acquisition bill, etc., which are sort of expected to be introduced in the budget session. But we have these terror attacks yesterday. Do you think that the opposition will let the budget session, function properly? We've seen the second day of the budget not really
already being disrupted, right?
Yes. So, what do you think?
See, we discussed this at last week's interview, and the thing is, every time there are important things to be done, there's something that happens. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or something, but this whole chopper thing scam that emerged, and subsequently, of course, there was these unfortunate terror attacks in Hyderabad yesterday.
Right.
Clearly ties the hands of the government. Government has to respond to it in some way. The opposition has to decide what it wants to do. To my mind, not everything the opposition does is constructive, right? There are things that they need to sort of object to, but there are things where they should sort of make it easier for the government. At least, you look at some of the economic policies, you look at some of the other measures, you look at various things that the government is seeking to do. These are exactly the same kind of things that the NDA would have tried to do had it been in power. So I think you need to sort of keep that in mind and be constructive about that. But as far as other issues are concerned, like the controversy about the purchase of the helicopters, I think the opposition is entirely within its rights in asking for the resignation of whichever head they want. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's clear that some wrongdoing has happened.
Right.
It's clear that it happened quite some time ago. It's clear that the government suspected that things were happening for some time.
Right.
So why does it take? Why does the government react only when things flare up? The easiest way
pushed against the wall.
But why do you have to be? Because that seems to suggest that you are hoping that it will go away and you cannot do anything. If you know that something has happened, something that shouldn't have happened has happened, shouldn't you be acting immediately? Shouldn't you be proactive about it? Because then you're sort of taking the wind out of the opposition sails, but instead you wait for the situation to get exacerbated and then finally act, and then the opposition says, obviously you will act, it's all over the papers, it's all over the television channels, it's all over the net, and in Italy people are losing their jobs and being put in prison for that, and here you're doing nothing.
So I guess what you're saying is that some questions have to be answered, but opposition also has to exercise some restraint let things function. We'll end with this. Thank you so much for joining us, Sukumar. That's all we have for you in today's edition of Headspace. Thanks, and stay tuned for more.